Hello and welcome to English Digest. I'm Seb.
And I'm Elsie.
And today we're going to be talking about a topic which has been in the news a lot over the last few years. I'm sure that you've heard of this before, Elsie, the Bilingual 2030 or Bilingual Nation.
So today's topic is Bilingual by 2030, yes or no?
Right. So have you heard of Bilingual Nation?
Yeah. So
what is Bilingual Nation?
A bilingual nation means people in the nation speak more than two languages?
Right. And the policy, which is a policy that the government has created in Taiwan, is one to make Taiwan bilingual or make it a country that speaks Chinese and English by 2030.
So should we do it or no?
Should we do it or no? Well, that is what we're going to be talking about today because people have a lot of opinions about this.
How
do you feel about it?
Oh my God, we just asked each other the same question.
Yes.
So I'll go first. As an English teacher myself, I always wonder why the government hasn't developed Taiwan into a bilingual country yet. I always wonder this. I think it's maybe too slow. They should speed up in doing this. What do you think?
I think, so I also have opinions about this because I'm an English speaker and I've lived in non-English speaking countries for 10 years now. And I think that it's a good goal, but I also think that it's maybe not realistic to do by 2030.
Oh, by 2030, maybe it's too fast?
I think it takes a really long time. I mean, it depends what you mean by bilingual. If you mean to actually be able to speak two languages at the same level and ability, I don't think it's possible, personally, because it takes a really long time and it involves a lot of immersion and you need both languages. People who are bilingual normally use it because, maybe at home they speak one language and they speak another one at school or something like that. So they get used to using two. For me, would say I'm fluent in Spanish and I can speak Spanish because I went to a Spanish university where I needed to use it for 5 years. So I used it every day from necessity and with my friends. So I became very comfortable using it. But I've lived in Taiwan now for 4 years and I wouldn't say that I'm a fluent Chinese speaker. I've been learning it, but I don't need it for everything in my daily life. I make myself study it. So I think it's very difficult to create the circumstances, the right conditions to become bilingual.
Yeah.
However, I think that really what this policy wants to do is make people confident with English, which doesn't mean being perfect at English, just means confident with English so that they have more opportunities and so they can make Taiwan a more attractive place to foreigners as well. So I think that is much more doable. And that I think is a really good goal to have. Still, there's a lot that we need to talk about with this policy, and that is what we're going to be discussing with today's assignment. So let's get into the topic and instructions section of today's episode. Now, I want to begin with two interesting statistics that I found recently. The first one is that 87% of Taiwanese people support English being included as a second official language. Okay, so a second official language, that would mean that it would be on road signs. There might be a lot of news programs and media which use English. Things like that. So you could get all of the public information that you need in English.
And that also means people in the nation are bilingual, right?
It doesn't need to be that everybody speaks English. So in countries that have English as an official language, like India, for example, not everybody speaks English. A lot of people do, but a lot of people don't as well. But all of the information you need, everything in daily life is available in English. So you can live there and use English. Another one, which is interesting, is 89% of people support schools being bilingual. So I think this is middle schools and elementary schools being bilingual. So there's a lot of benefits to that. What might be some benefits of a bilingual education?
I think kids can start learning English and learning how to speak and use English when they're young, and it's better for their maybe English learning in the future.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, when they start young, they can learn better, in my opinion.
Yes.
What do you think?
I think that it's very true. I think that you get better at a language when you need it for your daily life, as I was saying before. So I studied Spanish for 4 or 5 years before I went to Spain, but I didn't speak it that well because I only needed it to pass exams and to do homework and get a good grade. So I didn't use it for anything. Whereas when I moved there and I started to need to use it every day, then I started to improve very quickly. And I definitely found that my Chinese improved coming here because then I started to need it for certain things, but not as much as I needed Spanish in Spain. So yes, if you're a bilingual school, then you need it to study. So therefore, you're going to study more. And I do have some friends who've been to bilingual schools when they were in high school and speak those languages quite confidently as a result. So I can see the benefits of that.
Yeah.
All right, let's look at the assignment now
for
today's writing assignment. So we're going to be talking about this policy, Bilingual Nation.
好，今天的写作提示是呢，最近有一则新闻报道，标题为双语弱化母语，学者忧国家沦平庸。内容提到呢，为迈向2030年的双语国家，政府想要积极推动高中的双语教育，但是学者担心呢，现在能够完整使用英语教学的老师人数严重不足，而且学生们的英语能力也都不同，若没有审慎的规划，恐导致母语弱化、认同混乱等等的问题。那根据这样的主题写一篇英文作文，文长至少120个单字。
Exactly. In order to develop Taiwan into a bilingual nation by 2030, the government is promoting bilingual education in high schools. However, some scholars worried that there aren't enough teachers who can teach in English, and also that the students have different levels of English language proficiency. Without careful planning, it might affect their Chinese proficiency and cause identity confusion. Please write an essay of at least 120 words. The passage is divided into 2 paragraphs. Please explain whether you're for or against the bilingual nation policy in the first paragraph, and talk about what might be the possible effects of high school courses being taught in English.
好，那注意哦，文分2段，第一段要说明你是否赞成双语国家，并且说明原因。第二段，请你说明高中用英语上课可能造成的影响。
Right. Okay. So here we're going to be doing an argumentative essay, and we're going to make a case. We're going to argue whether it is a good idea or a bad idea to pursue the bilingual nation policy. So just looking at this assignment, I think there's lots of things we can think about.
Yeah.
Obviously, what we've talked about in the introduction, the benefits of being bilingual are many. Obviously, if you can speak English, it's very easy for you to study abroad, to access lots of different education. Actually, one example I forgot to include earlier was Malaysia. I think Malaysia is a good example of a multilingual country.
Yeah, also Singapore.
And Singapore, yes. But the reason I say Malaysia is Malaysians, I remember reading, are the biggest foreign consumers of UK degrees, because they have a similar education system to the UK and they have a very high level of English. So a lot of people, even though it's expensive to study abroad, a lot of them can study in the UK because they have a lot of the right skills to go to UK universities. And so that means that Malaysians have a lot of extra opportunities. But at the same time, if you're teaching bilingually is a big ask in a country where not everybody speaks English.
True.
English is not a dominant language in Taiwan yet. So that is something you need to think about as well. So, how are we going to write this essay?
好，我们来到 development approach 的地方哦。第一个，根据提示，本文属于议论性质的英文写作，那属于论说文的类型。一般而言呢，当我们要写这样子的与新闻议题相关的作文的时候，可以思考这个新闻的背景以及可能造成的影响，接着再决定文章的切入点。常见的架构，我们从引言 introduction 开始，可以简述新闻内容以及它所引发的这个议题讨论，然后再说明你或专家对此新闻议题的了解和看法。
Exactly. So there are a few things we could write in our introduction, depending on how much time you have or how fast you want to write. One of the best ways to begin is by doing what we did at the beginning of this episode, explaining what Bilingual Nation is. So Bilingual Nation is very famous. It's talked about a lot in the news, but you don't know that everybody understands Bilingual Nation. So explaining it makes sure that your reader knows what you're talking about and what you're making an argument about. And so that's very good for making your reading more accessible to people. So a good example for this could be Bilingual Nation is a policy aimed at making English one of Taiwan's major languages by 2030. After reading this, everybody understands what you mean, which is great. However, one other thing that you should remember here is your explanation needs to be very, very short. You only have about 120 words, maybe a bit more if you're a fast writer, and so you don't want to lose a paragraph explaining it. Do it in 1 or 2 sentences. An alternative thing that you can do is to use a narrative style, so to tell a short story about Bilingual Nation. That could be how you found out about it, or what your experiences were with learning foreign languages, or what your experience is with English. Again, do that in 1 or 2 sentences. And regardless of how you start, for this assignment, you need to state your opinion in the introduction, so also include that. Say it's a good idea to pursue Bilingual Nation or a bad idea. All right, after that, you're going to be ready to move on to the body.
没错，introduction 结束之后呢，我们要进到文章的主体，也就是 body 的部分，可以进一步深入的分析这一则新闻所引发的正反面讨论或者是成因，接着表达自己对此事件的观点，并说明它所造成的影响。
You might also want to include some counterpoints as well. Now, counterpoints are points that appear to go against your main argument. So, if you're arguing that bilingual education is a good thing, you could also include that it is difficult to find enough teachers that can teach in English. That's a counterpoint because it argues against your main argument. Why would you do this? Well, if you use a counterpoint and you can address it properly, it shows that you've considered both sides of the argument. You're not just thinking about why it's good. You're thinking about why it's good and also why it's bad. So when you talk about maybe schools not having enough resources to teach in English, you could also say, that's why I think the government should increase taxes to help pay for better education or something like that. So you've got a solution to the problem. That's something you can do to make your essay much more convincing. Lastly, we need to give our essay a conclusion.
最后呢，我们要带出 conclusion 结论，那可以提出对此事件的反省、检讨或是如何改善的建议，也可以呢扼要的重申自己的立场。
For the conclusion in an essay like this, you can reassert your opinion. Are you for bilingual education or against it? You can also talk about future developments that will make the reader think about how Bilingual Nation could be good or bad beyond 2030. So, for example, you could talk about how it might affect the economy, what it might do to Taiwanese culture, how it might affect international relations, family relations, or your own future. These are all things that you could include in your conclusion.
好，再来呢，我们要注意到的是，以本次写作的主题来说，第一段你必须要先简述新闻探讨的议题，跟在这个议题上你所抱持的态度。那第二段再举例佐证你的观点，你所举出的亲身经验越是具体，就越能支持你的论点，并且提高你文章的说服力哦。那再来呢，写作的时候必须切记文法结构、字词选用跟修辞等等的技巧，固然可以替你的文章加分，但是与其用艰深晦涩 不协调的字，还不如你去用简单易懂的字词和清楚有把握的句子。我们先求能够清楚、正确的表达自己的想法，再试着运用字词跟句式的变化来增加文章的深度。
All right, let's look at a few phrases that we might want to know when we're talking about our opinions. So the most famous one we would probably use is in my opinion, right?
Right.
What are a couple of other phrases we might want to use?
所以除了用 in my opinion 之外呢，以下是在表达个人看法的时候可以用到的句型哦，像是 I am of the opinion that 加上子句，好，也是代表我认为，或者是呢 my overall opinion is that 我总体的意见是如何。
Right, those are good alternatives. I am of the opinion that is a very formal thing that you can say, and my overall opinion shows that you might have considered some different things, have some other opinions or counterpoints that you think are true too, but generally speaking, you believe such and such. You believe it's good, you believe it's bad. A few that I like are I am in favor of, which basically means I support. And you could use this if you're talking about methods for bilingual nation. So I'm in favor of changing our school system, or I am in favor of hiring more teachers. And you could also say I approve of, just showing that you like something, 我赞成. So I like the way that English is taught in schools right now. I approve of our current education system, for example. Are there any others you want to add, Elsie?
那如果是表达不赞成，我们可以怎么使用呢？像是刚刚 Seb 提到的 I'm in favor of， 我们可以把那个 not 否定字加进去 I am not in favor of something， 或者是呢我们还可以用 I am opposed to 加上名词或是 VING， 因为这边的 to 当作介系词来使用，来代表你反对的事情是什么。
So let's move on to the brainstorming section of our episode now. So we need to think about what we are going to put in our argument.
所以看完题目之后，我们就觉得资讯好多，不知道要怎么样下笔。那我们可以先把架构图像化，之后再填入想法，就会觉得轻松简单多了。So, Seb, what do we see here?
Right, we have a chart here which helps us organize some of our arguments. So at the top we have our topic, Taiwan hopes to become a bilingual country by 2030. And we've got 3 columns, your opinion, your reasons, and your experience. Okay, your lived experience.
3个非常重要的部分，缺一不可。
Yes, and this seems like a very strong way of making an argument, because if you can give reasons and experiences behind your opinion, then your opinion feels much more valid. It feels much more informed and much more convincing. So here we've got, am I for it or against it? They say, I'm in favor of this idea. Why? It would really help prepare young people for their future. And lastly, classroom experience. We could read and discuss English language books in English classes, and it would be good to use English to learn other subjects. So these are things that they could do in classes, not just things that they have done.
Remember, you need to have strong supporting details.
Yes, it's very important to have strong supporting details. And on that note, I think we can move on to our outline, because we need to think about how we can organize these details into a convincing argument. So, an outline, remember, is a brief overview of what you are going to write that you put together before you begin writing. So it helps you plan out your thoughts into a clear and organized structure, and it saves you time when you're writing, and it makes your argument flow more nicely. So some tips when you're writing an outline: you want to be quick, write minimally, use minimal language, keep it to 1 or 2 words per bullet point. And I think we could do this outline very quickly if we had to do it in an exam. So what do we have here? Our first paragraph says, I recently read in the news that Taiwan hopes to become a bilingual country by 2030. Okay, so a narrative introduction that shows us how the person discovered this policy. A, I'm in favor of this idea. So first supporting point, I'm in favor of it. I think it's a good idea. It would really help prepare young people for their future. Okay, of course, if you could speak English, you can go to lots of different schools, get more jobs. And if young people could speak fluent English from a young age, they would find it easier to study and find jobs abroad. Also, very true. More reasons you would want to learn English. So we in this first paragraph, we have a strong idea that this person supports bilingual nation and they want Taiwan to become bilingual. What do we see in the second paragraph, Elsie?
好，到了主题句第二句的时候呢，就是第二段，我们看到的是 Our classroom experience would also change for the better. A. We could read and discuss English language books in English classes. B. It will be good to use English to learn other subjects. C. English is already the common language used in science. Science students should definitely learn in English.
Yes, very true. And then they give this conclusion. For these reasons, I support the plan to make Taiwan bilingual. So here, I think in an essay like this, you can just use the conclusion to reassert your opinion. Or you can do what this person does, and you can kind of state your actual opinion at the end. So they do say that they're in favor of it, but they don't say they support the plan until the very end. They give lots of reasons why it's good, and then they say, and that is why I think bilingual nation is good. So you could start with your opinion and then say it again, or you could just start talking about why it's good and at the end say, and that is why we should support bilingual nation. So those are both very good approaches. Right, let's take a pause here, and when we come back, we will read through the sample and go through some writing tips. Basic sample. I recently read in the news that Taiwan hopes to become a bilingual country, that's Mandarin and English, by 2030. I'm in favor of this idea, and I really hope that we can make it happen. I am of the opinion that it would really help prepare young people for their future. If young people could speak fluent English from a young age, they would find it easier to study and find jobs abroad. Our classroom experience would change too, for the better. In English classes, instead of just learning words and grammar rules, we could read and discuss English language books. It will be good to use English to learn other subjects too. English is already the common language used by scientists around the world, so science students should definitely learn in English. For these reasons, I support the plan to make Taiwan bilingual. Okay, so this follows the structure of our outline, and it gives us some strong reasons why bilingual nation is a good thing, why the speaker supports it.
没错，这一篇的结构非常的清楚简单。他一开始呢，先说 I recently read in the news that 带出最近听到读到的事情，在陈述这一则新闻。然后他说 I am in favor of this idea， 他就陈述了自身的意见。那陈述完自身意见，接下来就是要给原因，给 reasons。再来提出经验，他说到的是 Our classroom experience would change too for the better， 代表学习可以有做出更好的改变。最后他带出结论，再重申一次 I support the plan to make Taiwan bilingual.
Very good points. I also like this phrase, I am of the opinion that we talked about earlier. I am of the opinion that it would really help prepare young people for their future. So here we could also say something like, I believe, I strongly feel, or I am convinced, which could also all work very well. Lastly, we've got this word 精通, fluent. Which I think is a really good one to think about. When you're fluent in a language, you can speak it without any hesitation and use it in all daily situations that you need. You don't need to think too much. Fluency is a really good thing to talk about in this assignment because fluent English is going to bring about lots of advantages. So you can remember that word for your own writing. All right, let's move on now to the advanced sample. Advanced sample. The news that Taiwan is aiming to transform itself into a bilingual nation by 2030 certainly sparked a lot of discussion, not only in the media, but also among my fellow students. As far as I'm concerned, this is a terrible idea. There are already many local languages that deserve attention. Besides Mandarin and Taiwanese, there's also Hakka, not to mention the many indigenous languages spoken here. I fear that these languages, as well as the cultures that speak them, will be neglected in the drive to make English one of Taiwan's official languages. Another consideration in this case is that Taiwan does not have enough qualified teachers to make this proposal work, and that is going to do more harm than good. Let me elaborate on that last point. Suppose teachers who don't speak English well are asked to teach math and science classes in English. Some of the concepts are hard enough to explain in our native language, and trying to present them in English will just confuse things. Another problem is that while wealthy schools will be able to become bilingual and wealthy students will be able to attend them, poorer students will not. Many students will likely be left behind, and the gap between the haves and the have-nots will widen. While I understand the government's motivation for making Taiwan bilingual, I don't believe this plan can or should succeed. Okay, so a very different approach to this assignment. The person doesn't only talk about why they think it's a bad idea, but they talk about why they think it is difficult to put it into action. I think one thing that I liked here, one thing which I think was a very good point, is about getting teachers to teach in English if they're not so experienced. I should say that earlier when I said I know lots of people who speak other languages well because they went to bilingual schools, they went to bilingual schools where they had a large number of native speakers teaching those classes. So, for example, a friend who went to a German school, half of his teachers were German or were fluent German speakers. And that's doable for a private school because a private school is one school. But for a whole country, I don't know if you can get enough English speakers or enough fluent English speakers who are teachers to do that.
Yeah, like
what do you think?
When kids go to private schools, they can have a lot of foreign teachers there, but students in public schools, they don't have that access.
Yes.
So I think that's the difficulty we're talking about here.
Definitely.
Okay. 好，这边呢我们看到 aim to 加上原形动词，代表目的在于、致力于，是一个很好的用法。像是呢这边说到 Taiwan is aiming to transform itself into a bilingual nation. 再来，激起很多的讨论 spark 后面加上 a lot of discussion. Spark 是一个很好的用字。再来一个，它带出自身意见用的是 as far as I'm concerned. 也是一个很好的用法。那接下来呢，我们看到它最后重申意见，前后呼应。他说While I understand the government's motivation for making Taiwan bilingual, I don't believe this plan can or should succeed. 所以他一方面先说他是了解的，只是他不觉得会成功。
And lastly, I really like this phrase, let me elaborate on that last point. So when we elaborate, we talk more about something. If you look at the passage, they say at the end of the first paragraph, another consideration in this case is that Taiwan does not have enough qualified teachers to make this proposal work, and that is going to do more harm than good. The person is saying a lot of things in that sentence, and it kind of needs more supporting information for it to be a good point. So they then say, allow me to elaborate on that last point. Let me elaborate on that last point. Let me explain what I mean. So this is really good, both in written English and in spoken English. If you're doing a speech or you're debating or doing an argument, you can use this to expand on something when you know you're saying something very complicated or you've said something which has a lot of ideas in it. So that's a good one to remember. All right, I think that is all the time we have for today's episode, unfortunately. So take another read through the advanced sample when you have time. There's a lot of really good language in there and a lot of good arguments, I think, that can be considered as well. But yes, that is all the time that we have for English Digest. It's been Seb.
It's Elsie here.
And we will see you again soon.
See you again soon.
Bye-bye.